Some people talk about chasing the American dream, but these Filipino families turned it into a multi-million-dollar industry. From rocket engineers at NASA to Silicon Valley chip tycoons worth billions, let's count down the 10 richest Filipino families in America. And trust me, by the time we reach number 1, you'll see just how far Filipino brilliance can go when it's backed by billion-dollar circuitry. Let's begin. Number 10. The Santiago Family, NASA engineers and aerospace stewards. You know how most Filipino families dream of sending their kids to America to reach for the stars? Well, the Santiagos actually achieved that, quite literally. Josephine "Jo" Santiago Bond and her husband are NASA employees contributing to space missions. Together, the couple has built a massive $8 million empire. But how did it all begin? Let's rewind. Born in Antipolo and raised in a family that prized education over everything else, Josephine's story reads like the blueprint of classic immigrant grit. She aced her way through the Philippine Science High School, then UP Diliman's notoriously tough electronics and communications engineering program, before packing her bags for grad school in South Dakota. The plan was simple: study hard, get a good job, and maybe send money home. What happened next wasn't simple at all. Her summer internship at NASA turned into a full-time gig, then a leadership role, and eventually, the stuff space documentaries are made of. She helped develop ARIS, LAD, and RESOLVE, systems that track astronauts' environments and search for water on the moon. Today, she runs an engineering division at the Kennedy Space Center, managing teams responsible for mission-critical tech that literally keeps rockets from exploding. No big deal. What makes the Santiago story special isn't the money but the magnitude. In a world where immigrants are often boxed into back-office roles, Jo carved out a legacy inside one of the most competitive institutions on the planet. She now mentors Filipino students in STEM, fund scholarships, and proudly calls herself an engineer NASA didn't expect, but exactly the one it needed. They're not the loud kind of rich without any Rolls-Royces or private jets, but in terms of impact and prestige, the Santiago name carries more weight than most trust funds. And while Jo built her empire one launch at a time, our next story is the complete opposite. A billion-dollar fortune built from heartbreak, boldness, and a plot twist straight out of a Wall Street drama. Number 9. The Lewis Family, the crazy comeback story. While most millionaires are born into wealth, Loida Nicolas Lewis had instead inherited a crisis. But then, somehow, she turned that crisis into one of the most remarkable corporate comebacks in modern history. Born in Sorsogon and armed with a UP law degree, Loida was always the overachiever type, the kind who breaks rules politely but effectively. She moved to New York, became the first Filipina to pass the New York bar without a US law degree, and later earned her master's from Columbia. For years, she worked steadily at the Immigration and Naturalization Service, quietly climbing bureaucratic ranks while raising a family. But then came the heartbreak. Her husband, Reginald F. Lewis, one of America's first black billionaires and the brains behind TLC Beatrice International, shockingly passed away in 1993, and all of a sudden, Loida was thrust into the CEO chair of a $2.2 billion food conglomerate operating across 31 countries. Everyone expected her to fail, and Wall Street analysts even started whispering that she'd sell off the business or fade into polite retirement. But here's the kicker. Loida walked into that boardroom, straightened her shoulders, and ran TLC Beatrice better than most Ivy League-trained executives. She restructured debts, streamlined operations, and sold the company at a massive profit in 1999. A grieving widow turned boardroom boss, and not just surviving, but building a $900 million empire. Her family's fortune now spans investments, real estate, and philanthropic ventures that uplift immigrant communities. Through her foundation, she funds scholarships, legal programs, and leadership training for Filipinos and other minorities across the U.S. Loida didn't just preserve a legacy, she rewrote the script for what resilience looks like at the top. It's the kind of story you'd expect from a Netflix biopic. Tragedy, power, reinvention, and a finale that ends in triumph instead of tears. But while Loida's rise feels like a corporate thriller, our next entry moves us from the boardroom to the ballroom, where one Filipina turned lace and satin into a multi-million-dollar fashion empire. Number 8. The Lhuillier Family, the bridal and celebrity fashion dynasty. If you've seen a red carpet event in the last 2 decades, then you've certainly seen a Monique Lhuillier gown. She's the designer Hollywood turns to when something beyond stunning is required. From Taylor Swift to Michelle Obama, her creations have walked more red carpets than most celebrities themselves. Born in Cebu to a jewelry magnate father and a society fashionista mother, Monique grew up surrounded by beauty. But she wasn't content being a socialite. After studying in Switzerland, she enrolled at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles, where her thesis designs caught instant attention. In 1996, she and her husband, Tom Bugbee, launched Monique Lhuillier Bridal, a label that started with wedding gowns but quickly evolved into a full-blown luxury house. Her genius? She made bridal wear aspirational but attainable, tapping into a recession-proof niche where emotion drives spending. When Britney Spears wore a Lhuillier dress for her wedding, the brand exploded. Soon after came global celebrity placements: Reese Witherspoon, Taylor Swift, Blake Lively, even former First Lady Michelle Obama. Each appearance became an ad money couldn't buy. But here's where it gets interesting. Monique didn't stop at couture. She expanded into home decor, fragrances, and ready-to-wear, transforming her aesthetic into a full lifestyle brand. Her headquarters in Los Angeles now houses design studios, showrooms, and a thriving e-commerce arm that sells elegance in every form. Beyond business, Monique gives back generously to arts and fashion education in the Philippines, sponsoring young designers and promoting Filipino craftsmanship abroad. The Lhuillier have built a brand that whispers luxury instead of shouting it, the kind of wealth measured not by yachts or tabloids, but by timeless influence. And if you think turning silk and sequins into millions is impressive, let us take you to the corporate high floors of Walmart and Nestlé, where another Filipina decided she was done helping others build their empires and started building her own. Number 7. The Martello Family, global C-suite and private equity strategists. Before most executives finish their morning briefing, Juan Ling Martello has already shifted the gears of 3 global markets. Her story begins in Manila, where a math-savvy Filipina from UP Diliman realized early that numbers could move not just spreadsheets, but economies. After earning her MBA at the University of Minnesota, she joined global giants like Walmart International and Nestlé, taking on CFO and senior finance roles that put her at the nerve center of multi-billion-dollar supply chains. She wasn't just tracking performance. She was rewriting how these corporations deployed capital across continents. Eventually, that corporate precision turned into private equity muscle. Juan Ling became a founding partner at Bain Capital, a Boston-based private equity firm managing multi-billion-dollar assets across retail, CPG, and tech. Think of her as the quiet power behind the boardroom glass, the kind of strategist who can pull strings that move markets. The Martello family portfolio now spans North America, Asia, and the Middle East, with stakes in logistics, green tech, and digital commerce. What makes them fascinating isn't just the wealth, it's the strategy. The Martellos represent a rare breed of Filipino family that isn't known for showy businesses or celebrity ventures, but for intellectual capital, the kind that quietly compounds into equity and influence. Juan Ling's network reads like a global finance who's who, with board positions at Alibaba, Stellantis, and even early advisory roles for Uber. Philanthropically, the family channels capital back into education and trade initiatives connecting Asia and the US, sponsoring Filipino scholars in international business and finance. But while Juan Ling plays her moves with surgical calm, the transition ahead is pure fire, because the next Filipino powerhouse didn't just build a company, she built an entire industry. Number 6. The Marcelo Family, caretech pioneers and policy-native founders. It started with a mother, a laptop, and a childcare problem no amount of corporate planning could fix. Enter Sheila Lirio Marcelo, who not only solved that problem but also turned that moment of frustration into the world's largest caregiving marketplace and rewrote how the world thinks about care. Born in Baguio to a family of educators, Sheila's journey was shaped by two forces: empathy and ambition. After earning a double degree in law and business from Harvard, yup, both, she spent years working in consulting and corporate leadership before hitting a personal pain point: struggling to find reliable childcare while juggling career and motherhood. Instead of just venting about it, she did what great founders do. She built the solution. In 2006, Sheila launched Care.com, the world's first large-scale marketplace for caregivers, connecting families with babysitters, tutors, and elder care professionals. What started as a side idea grew into a global platform spanning 20-plus countries, serving millions, and going public in 2014. 6 years later, it was acquired for nearly $500 million, the kind of exit that cements legacies. But here's what separates Sheila from the Silicon Valley stereotype. She didn't just build a tech company, she built policy into the product. As one of the few immigrant women to take a company public, she used her platform to advocate for paid family leave, childcare support, and women's empowerment in tech. Today, she runs new ventures like Proof of Learn and Ohio.ai, merging education, blockchain, and caregiving into next-generation ecosystems. Her family's influence now extends into angel investing, education advocacy, and social innovation, the kind of empire that turns compassion into capital. Next up, we have a family that proved that style could be just as powerful a business model as software, especially when it carries the elegance of two worlds stitched into one. Number 5. The Natori family, fashion and manufacturing hybrids. When most people retire from Wall Street, they buy art. Josie Natori decided to become the art herself. Born in Manila, she was the kind of overachiever who could crunch numbers as easily as she could sketch designs. After moving to New York for college at Manhattanville, she joined Merrill Lynch and shattered glass ceilings as one of the firm's youngest female vice presidents, back when Wall Street was still an old boys club. But her defining move came in 1977, when she swapped stocks for silk. Literally. After a friend sent her a set of embroidered blouses from the Philippines, Josie realized something no one else did. The artistry of Filipino craftsmanship deserved a global stage. So she launched the Natori Company, a luxury fashion and lifestyle brand blending Eastern heritage with Western design. By 1983, her lingerie and resort lines were gracing the racks of Bloomingdale's and Saks, redefining what made in the Philippines meant in fashion. Unlike many designers who outsource production overseas, Josie built her own manufacturing operations back home, employing over 500 Filipino artisans. Her empire now spans home decor, fragrance, and ready-to-wear collections, but its backbone is her vertically integrated model that sustains livelihoods and exports Filipino artistry to the world. She's been decorated with national honors like the Order of La Candula, and her son, Kenneth, now helps run the company, keeping it both a family business and a cultural bridge. The Natori name doesn't just represent luxury, it represents legacy. And while Josie's empire flows with elegance and discipline, the story ahead shifts gears. Because our next entry isn't about stitching silk or spreadsheets. It's about wielding empires and owning entire industries. The kind of wealth that doesn't just grow, it governs. Number 4. The Benjamin family, fintech architects and payments innovators. Before fintech became a buzzword, Yobi Benjamin was already coding the pipes that make your digital wallet work. Born in Malabon and educated at UP Diliman, Yobi's journey reads like the blueprint of a modern polymath. He landed in the US with a head full of code and a knack for turning complex systems into seamless experiences. He became a key technical architect behind payment ecosystems like Google Wallet and Apple Pay, the invisible infrastructure that now moves trillions of dollars every day. But here's where it gets wild. He didn't stop at fintech. Benjamin co-founded companies in wearables, climate tech, and biotech, dabbling in everything from next-gen display tech to pandemic diagnostics. His fingerprints are all over the modern intersection of software, hardware, and humanity. Through his firm, token.io, he helped define open banking standards across Europe, the rules that let banks and fintechs actually talk to each other securely. Today, his family invests in AI, biotechnology, and climate resilience, what he calls planet-scale problems worth solving. He's as comfortable pitching in Silicon Valley boardrooms as he is mentoring young Filipino coders dreaming of their own startup exits. But while Yobi built the rails of digital finance, our next powerhouse family laid the foundations of modern Wall Street. And they did it decades before Asia became the world's favorite investment story. Number 3. The Clemente family, the Wall Street pioneers. When most of Wall Street was still squinting at Asia through the fog of post-war economics, Lhuillier Clemente saw the future. Lhuillier's story starts with intellect and nerve. A UP Diliman economics graduate turned Ford Foundation executive, she earned her master's at the University of Chicago, a powerhouse in economic thought. Before deciding that instead of working in global finance, she'd rather reshape it. So, in 1976, she launched Clemente Capital, one of the first woman-led investment firms in New York, with an audacious focus, bringing U.S. money into Asian markets before anyone else dared. Her firm went on to manage billions in assets at its peak, pioneering cross-border investment vehicles that opened the floodgates for future private equity and venture capital flows between America and Asia. At a time when female fund managers were rare and Filipino ones nearly unheard of, Lhuillier built a reputation as a market architect, a quiet force whose decisions rippled through indices and economies alike. But she didn't stop at managing capital, she cultivated it. Through her family foundation, she's funded scholarships, leadership programs, and educational institutions designed to equip the next generation of Asian American thinkers and financiers. Lhuillier Clemente's wealth is institutional, the kind that comes from patience, policy, and perspective. Her name carries weight not for glamour, but for gravity. And while she taught the US how to invest in Asia, our next legend taught Silicon Valley how to dream in circuits, the engineer who built the chips that made the digital age possible. Number 2. The Banatao family, semiconductor innovators and Silicon Valley patrons. If Silicon Valley had a Mount Rushmore, Dado Banatao would be carved right into it, probably holding a microchip in one hand and a soldering iron in the other. Born in rural Cagayan, he grew up walking dirt roads barefoot, studying under kerosene lamps and fixing radios for fun. Those humble beginnings led him to Mapua Institute of Technology, then Stanford, where he'd go on to design innovations that changed personal computing forever. Banatao invented the first single-chip 16-bit microprocessor-based calculator, then the first single-chip Ethernet controller, technologies that made PCs cheaper, faster, and accessible to billions. If your laptop talks to the internet today, you owe a nod to Dado. After a string of successful tech startups, he founded Tallwood Venture Capital, a powerhouse fund that has backed dozens of semiconductor and deep tech companies. His estimated net worth, around $800 million, is built on pure intellectual horsepower and relentless engineering grit. But what truly sets him apart is what he gives back. Through the Banatao Foundation, he's poured millions into scholarships, labs, and R&D programs across the Philippines, seeding the next generation of tech talent. He's turned philanthropy into nation-building, using chips and capital to wire opportunity where it's needed most. But as impressive as Dado's modern tech vision is, the number 1 rank on our list belongs to someone who turned Silicon Valley into generational wealth. The crown jewel of Filipino-American success, and the quiet billionaire who turned Silicon into legacy. Number 1. The Ocampo family, the crown jewel of Silicon Valley. Susan Ocampo's story is what happens when brilliance meets boldness and refuses to blink. While many dream of breaking into Silicon Valley, she walked in, built a semiconductor empire, and then IPO'd it into history. Born and raised in the Philippines, Susan moved to the US in the early 1980s with a head for numbers and an instinct for innovation. In 1984, she co-founded a semiconductor company called Sirenza Microdevices in California. a bold move in an era when the valley was dominated by engineers named in history books, and women were still fighting to get a seat in the lab, let alone the boardroom. But Ocampo was not there to assist. She was there to lead. As the company's CFO and treasurer, she became the financial architect behind its rise, steering it through R&D breakthroughs, scaling production, and securing supply chain partnerships across Asia at a time when global chip fabrication was still in its infancy. Under her stewardship, the firm grew from a scrappy component manufacturer to a world-class semiconductor supplier, culminating in a landmark IPO in 2000 that cemented her place among Silicon Valley's quiet powerhouses. But here's where her story truly bends expectations. When the company was acquired in 2007, Susan didn't retire or fade from the radar. Instead, she reinvested her windfall into the very ecosystem she helped build. Through a web of venture vehicles and private stakes, she positioned her family at the center of next-gen chip innovation. From AI accelerators and data center processors to energy-efficient sensor networks that drive everything from autonomous cars to smart cities. By 2025, her family's net worth is estimated at over $2.3 billion, with a significant equity position in MACOM Technology Solutions, one of the most promising names in the global AI hardware space. Yet, despite her immense wealth, Ocampo remains grounded, and no one even knows how she truly looks like. In the end, most fortunes are inherited or discovered, but the Ocampo legacy? It was engineered, one chip, one breakthrough, and one generation at a time. And this concludes our journey through the 10 richest Filipino families in America. Which one of these wealthy dynasties impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, take a look at the channel.